Welcome back to Northeast Legends and Stories, where we dive deep into the rich tapestry of New England's past, uncovering tales that have shaped its history and captured imaginations across generations. You know, there's a certain wild poetry in the way folks in these parts have always dreamed big, bucking the ordinary to chase heavens on earth. Whether it's rocky shores hiding ancient nights or quiet valleys birthing communes that redefined love, work, and sin itself. Today, we're wandering into one of those fever dreams turned flesh and blood, the story of John Humphrey Noyes, a Vermont preacher who didn't just talk about perfection, he built a whole society around it, complete with shared silverware, shared beds, and a blueprint for breeding the future. It's a tale of holy fire and scandalous sparks, set against the green hills of New England and the industrial hum of upstate New York, where a band of believers tried to outrun jealousy, poverty, and the long arm of the law. But let's linger here a moment, because this isn't some dusty footnote in a theology tome. It's a living experiment that tangled with the raw edges of human nature, from ecstatic unions to bitter fractures, leaving behind not just ruins but recipes for how we still stir our spoons and souls. Settle in with a cup of something strong, maybe a cider from those very Vermont orchards, because we're about to unravel a utopia that still echoes in our silver forks and free-thinking hearts. Let's step into the light. Imagine the autumn of 1811, leaves turning gold and crimson along the Connecticut River in Brattleboro, Vermont, a town where the wind carries whispers of revolution from the old Yankee stock, those hardy settlers who'd tamed the wilderness with axes and anthems. Into this world steps John Humphrey Noyes on September 3rd, the son of John Noyes, a man who wore hats like preacher, teacher, businessman, and even congressman in the U.S. House of Representatives during those heady post-revolutionary days, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Daniel Webster in Washington halls. And his mother, Polly Hayes Noyes, whose family tree would later sprout a president in Rutherford B. Hayes, her nephew, a connection that later lent the Noyes name a quiet sheen of national intrigue. Young John grows up in a household buzzing with ideas, the air thick with sermons and debates, his father's voice booming from the local Congregationalist pulpit, while the boy, with his mop of dark hair and piercing blue eyes, pores over books by flickering candlelight, devouring everything from Jonathan Edwards' Fire and brimstone treatises to the secular sparks of Enlightenment thinkers smuggled in from Boston. It's a world of stern Calvinist roots, where sin is the shadow you can't shake, predestination a chain around the soul, but little John, sharp as a Dartmouth freshman by age 18, feels the pull of something bigger, a restlessness that no law degree or quiet life could tame. A sense that the divine wasn't locked in dusty doctrines, but waiting to burst forth in the everyday grind of valley life. By 1831, fresh from Dartmouth College where he'd excelled in classics and rhetoric, Noyes dives headlong into the Second Great Awakening, that great wave of revival sweeping the Northeast like a holy fever, camp meetings thundering through the hills with shouts and swoons under lantern light. He hears the thunder of Charles Grandison Finney, the fire, and brimstone evangelist whose words crackle like lightning across the Oberlin plains, preaching that salvation isn't some distant dream doled out by an arbitrary God, but a here. And now Blaze you could seize with faith alone, a personal choice that remakes the heart in an instant. At 20, in a Brattleboro meeting house packed with farmers in woolen coats and wives clutching hymnals, Noyes has his moment, a conversion that hits him like a thunderclap on a clear day. He later writes of it with that poetic fire in his journals. "My heart was fixed on the millennium, and I resolved to live or die for it." A vow that echoes the era's millennial fever, folks scanning the skies for signs of Christ's return amid cholera scares and canal booms. No half measures for this young seeker, he swaps law books for theology, enrolling first at the rigid Andover Theological Seminary in Massachusetts, where the air reeks of orthodoxy and old ink, then transferring to Yale Divinity School in the fall of 1832, hungry for the pure word of the Bible, unfiltered by creeds. Yale's hallowed halls become his forge, where ideas hammer into shape under the gaze of stern professors like Nathaniel William Taylor, the liberal light of New Haven's intellectual scene. Noyes throws himself into study, even helping spark one of the nation's first anti-slavery societies in New Haven, his abolitionist fire burning bright alongside his spiritual quest, penning fiery pamphlets that rail against the chains of bondage as a sin against the perfect kingdom. But it's in his second year poring over ancient texts by lamplight in a cramped dorm overlooking the Long Island Sound that the revelation strikes like a midnight revelation. Christ's second coming wasn't some future trumpet blast heralded by earthquakes and eclipses, but a done deal back in 70 AD, when Jerusalem fell to Roman legions and the Old Covenant shattered in flames. To Noyes, this flips the script entirely. We're not waiting for the end times with bated breath. We're smack in the middle of a new age. The millennium unfolding now, where sin isn't an eternal chain forged in Eden, but a habit believers can kick clean through sheer willed faith and the indwelling Holy Spirit. He calls it perfectionism, borrowing from Finney's spark but fanning it into a blaze all his own. True Christians aren't just saved from hell's pit. They're sinless in practice. Their every choice a divine echo because their hearts are remade pure, egos dissolved in God's ocean. On February 20th, 1834, in a quiet dorm room, Epiphany shared only with his closest confidants, Noyes declares himself perfect, free from sin's grip, a bold claim that ripples out like a stone in still water, first to whispers among classmates, then to shocked letters home. Word spreads like gossip through the ivy, and Yale's elders recoil in horror, the faculty branding him a heretic for presuming to outpace the apostles, revoking his preaching license faster than you can say Calvinist orthodoxy, exiling him from the pulpit in a move that echoes the church's old inquisitions. Undeterred, Noyes packs his bags with that defiant glint in his eye and heads back to Putney, that same Vermont valley of his birth, where the river murmurs secrets and the hills cradle secrets of their own. I took away their license to sin, and they go on sinning, he quips in a letter to a friend, that wry edge cutting through the piety like a scythe through wheat. They have taken away my license to preach, but I shall go on preaching. He sets up shop as an itinerant voice, traveling the circuit on horseback through mud, slick roads, drawing a flock of kindred spirits, folks hungry for a gospel that promises not just heaven someday, but holiness today, tangible as the calluses on their hands. By 1836, he's formalizing it all with the Putney Bible School, a gathering of souls in his family home-turned classroom. A modest clapboard affair with a pot-belly stove and shelves groaning under Bibles in Greek and Hebrew, where they dissect scripture line by line, debating salvation like philosophers over ale, voices rising in the lamplight as snow piles against the panes. The school isn't just talk, it's a seedbed for what Noyes dubs Bible communism. The notion that if we're all perfect in Christ, why hoard property like sinners grasping at straws? Share it all, he preaches, echoing the early church in Acts of the Apostles where believers held nothing back, pooling goods for the common pot, no one calling a furrow or a flock their own. His followers, a tight-knit circle of about 30 by the early 1840s, start experimenting in earnest, deeding farms and funds to the group under legal trusts. Living lean but equal under one roof. Meals taken family style with wooden bowls passed hand to hand. And then there's the spark that lights the fuse. Love, not the chaste Victorian sort shrouded in lace and longing, but a bold, untamed vision straight from the Song of Solomon. In 1837, Noyes pens the infamous Battle Axe Letter, a private missive to a female follower named Abigail Merwin that leaks like wildfire through the valley gossip vines, declaring traditional marriage a yoke of jealousy and possession, unfit for the perfect soul, a relic of the fall that chains hearts in exclusivity. True union, he argues with scriptural fervor, is free love among the faithful, all men husbands to all women in the community. Consent the only chain worth wearing. Jealousy a sin to be rooted out like weeds in a victory garden, confessed and critiqued until it withers. Scandal brews quick in Puritan Vermont, where Sunday sermons still thunder against fornication's pit, and the telegraph wires hum with tales from distant scandals. Noyes marries Harriet Holton in 1838, A union born of deep affection for the bright-eyed schoolteacher from a nearby farm, her calm demeanor a steadying hand to his prophetic storms. But it's tested early and cruelly by loss. 5 children in 6 years with only one surviving infancy. Tiny graves dotting the family plot like unanswered prayers. A grief that sends him deep into questions of sex and spirit, poring over medical journals and midwifery texts by candlelight. He studies it like a theologian turned anatomist, drawing from phrenologists and vitalists of the day, concluding that intercourse splits into amative and propagative, the first a holy spark of soul to soul connection akin to prayer made flesh. The second a mere vessel for heirs that risks the mother's life in an age of no anesthesiology. From this blooms male continence, his 1848 pamphlet's bold claim, laid out in clinical prose. Love without the flood of seed, climax for her in waves of divine ecstasy, control for him through disciplined will, turning beds into altars free of shame or waste, a practice he claims not only spiritual but healthful, warding off the debilitating drain of unchecked passion. It's revolutionary, whispering women's pleasure first in an age of prudery where doctors prescribed corsets for hysteria. But oh, the backlash when whispers turn to practice among the faithful. By May 1846, in the Putney parsonage with its creaking floors and herb-scented air, Noyes crosses the line with quiet ceremony, weaving his marriage with Harriet into a complex one with close friends George and Mary Craigan. A foursome bound not by rings or rivalries but by faith's free flow. Permissions sought in group prayer circles that feel like confessions turned celebrations. Word spreads beyond the fold. And by mid-1847, young women in the Bible school join the dance with guided pairings, all under Noyes' watchful eye as spiritual patriarch. His journal entries noting the ascending joy as jealousy yields to communal bliss. The town erupts like a powder keg. Tongues wagging from church pews to the general store counter, elders thundering from pulpits about Sodom's gates flung wide. And in October 1847, a grand jury in Brattleboro indicts him for adulterous fornication, the law's hammer poised to fall with warrants served at dawn. Noyes slips bail like a shadow in the fog, fleeing across state lines to the wilder frontiers of central New York, where sympathetic perfectionists in the burned Overdistrict offer land near the fledgling town of Oneida, a spot where the Oneida Creek meets the Erie Canal's hum. It's February 1848, snow blanketing the fields in drifts as deep as doubts when he plants the flag. The Oneida Community, a fresh start on 27 acres of fertile black soil. His band of 87 souls trailing behind like pilgrims to a new Zion, wagons laden with seed corn and spinning wheels. Picture it, that first spring of 1848, axes ringing on pine and maple as they raise the children's house, a long, low building of fieldstone and timber for shared living and nursery duties, then expanding to the grander mansion house by 1866, a sprawling 93,000 square foot marvel of Victorian gingerbread with gabled roofs and wraparound porches that still stands today as a National Historic Landmark, its halls echoing with the ghosts of group hymns. The community swells like yeast in warm dough, hitting 306 members by 1878, a bustling hive of believers drawn from Vermont farms to city intellectuals, mechanics from Lowell mills to seamstresses from Albany tenements, branches sprouting in Wallingford, Connecticut, where silk farms flourish under the same banner, Newark, New Jersey, with its ironworks, even lingering echoes in Brooklyn and Cambridge, Massachusetts, where college radicals dip toes in the waters. It's no ragged outpost scraping by on roots and resolve. They thrive on ingenuity born of necessity. Starting with silk thread spun from mulberry groves planted in neat rows, the looms clacking like rosary beads under women's steady hands, then pivoting to steel traps for beaver hats. Those cunning Oneida traps with their double spring jaws that snare markets from Hudson's Bay Company outposts to Paris salons. Patents filed in Washington by 1852, raking in royalties that fund the dream. By the 1870s, they're masters of silver, plating spoons and forks in a foundry that hums like a heartbeat from dawn till dusk, electroplating vats bubbling with secrets learned from traveling chemists, laying the groundwork for an empire that outlives the dream. forks that twirl pasta in Italian villas or grace presidential tables. At the core pulses Noyes' perfectionism, that unyielding belief you're not just forgiven but flawless in the now. Sin a ghost you banish with daily disciplines like mutual criticism sessions where the group circles up like a Quaker, meeting gone frank and unflinching, airing flaws with love's scalpel to prune the ego, a sister confessing vanity in her ribbon choice, a brother owning sloth in the fields, all met with nods and prayers, not scorn. Ascending fellowship mentors the young in tears, elders guiding spiritual and yes, carnal climbs, older hands teaching continence's art to eager initiates through whispered lessons and patient practice, turning novices into adepts. Children, born rare under stirpiculture's watchful eye, that eugenic twist Noyes unveils in 1869 with scientific zeal, a scientific breeding program picking pairs for virtue and vigor, based on phrenological charts and family traits, raising the wee ones communal in the nursery with its painted walls and shared cribs, free from parental tethers to bond with the whole like bees in a hive. Births stay low, maybe 40 kids over 30 years, thanks to continence's guard and herbal checks brewed from willow bark. But when they come, it's a village rite. Mothers tended by a cadre of midwives. Back to work in weeks while aunts and uncles weave the lullabies. The children schooled in group classes on everything from arithmetic to anatomy. Their laughter a balm against the world's howls. Life here hums with a rhythm all its own. Dawn breaking to group prayers in the vast dining hall where tables groan under communal feasts of cornbread, venison stews, and pies from community orchards. No one cooking their own pot, but all sharing the bounty. Conversations flowing like the creek outside. Afternoons blur into labor rotations drawn by lot. Men and women side by side in fields or factories. Silk looms clacking like prayers under skylights. Trap springs tested with precision on workbenches scarred by files. Everyone from the prophet's wife to the newest convert pulling equal weight. Wages pooled into a central fund that doles out needs with Yankee thrift. Evenings bring lectures in the parlor, Noyes holding court from his wing chair upholstered in horsehair, expounding on the millennium's march through history's pages, or dances where hands link without possessions sting, quadrilles and waltzes to fiddle and piano, skirts swirling in candlelight as laughter chases shadows. It's intoxicating, this heaven on earth. Reports from visitors like the English reformer Robert Owen, glowing with the glow of converts, tales of harmony where jealousy withers like frost, bit apple under the sun of mutual love. One diarist noting, "Here the heart expands without fear of fracture, but cracks spiderweb beneath the polished floors." Whispers of favoritism as Noyes claims first fruits among the virgins in the complex weave. His special love a perk of prophecy that chafes the ranks like an ill-fitted yoke. Younger men grumbling in side conversations about the elders' privileges. The second generation, born to the dream and weaned on its doctrines, starts yearning for monogamy's quiet anchor. Traditional rings glinting in secret exchanges under the apple trees. Letters smuggled to sweethearts outside the fold. Challenges mount like storm clouds over the throughway's future path. Outsiders gawk and condemn from picket lines. Newspapers splashing headlines of free love orgies that draw preachers like flies to honey. 47 clergymen petitioning Governor John Dix in 1876 to shut it down as a moral menace, while inside debates simmer over stirpiculture's cold calculations. Some mothers weeping at pairings that feel more like auctions than altars. The founder's aging frame falters, Noyes turning 68 in 1879, his once iron will bending under health's weight with rheumatism gnawing his joints and hubris's toll weighing on his brow, visions dimming as the world sharpens its knives. He grooms his son Theodore agnostic and adrift in Yale's secular halls for the mantle. But the boy balks at the burden, penning essays that question the faith's foundations. A power struggle erupts with John Towner, a rising star with mechanical genius and eyes on the throne. His traps the community's golden goose, tensions boiling over in closed-door councils. Then the blow lands hard. Whispers of statutory rape swirl around the stirpiculture trials. Girls barely bloomed paired with elders under the program's banner. The law sniffing close with detectives from Albany lurking in the tree line. In June 1879, Noyes bolts to Canada under cover of night, holding up in the community's Niagara Falls factory amid the roar of turbines, wiring back frantic missives in August to call off complex marriage. Let it die a natural death as the spirit leads. Without his fire to stoke the hearth, the flame gutters low, the community voting in a tense all-night session to disband the old ways, reforming January 1st, 1881, as Oneida Community Limited, a joint stock company that funnels the faithful's fortunes into shares traded quietly, the silverworks churning on without the sermons, traps clicking in distant wilds. Noyes lingers in exile, dictating memoirs from his Ontario sickbed, lined with quilts from Wallingford looms, his voice a rasp as he reflects on triumphs and thorns. Dying April 13th, 1886, at 74, his body shipped back across the border for burial in the Mansion House grounds, a quiet plot under Vermont oaks transplanted to New York soil. Harriet joining him there in 1886 after a lifetime of quiet devotion. The last original, Ella Florence Underwood, a seamstress turned elder, holds out till 1950, her 101 years woven with the weave, her final tales spun to grandchildren who barely grasp the fire. But oh, the echoes, they don't fade. They amplify into our world like a silver bells ring tolling through time. That company? Oneida Limited. It balloons into a global giant by the early 20th century. Tableware gracing dinners from White House banquets under Teddy Roosevelt to your grandma's hutch in the suburbs. A $500 million empire by the 2000s with factories from Sherrill, New York to Sherrill, Ontario. Before mergers with Lifetime Brands in 2003 and markets merciless trim its sales. But the name endures, a whisper of communal craft in every fork tine that spears your salad. Community plate patterns like the ornate century still cherished by collectors. And the ideas? They ripple wider than the Mohawk Valley's misty mornings, perfectionism fueling the fire of later reformers, from Oberlin's abolitionists marching to John Brown's beat, to the holiness movements that birthed Pentecostalism's blaze in Azusa Street revivals, tongues of fire nodding to Noyes' sinless spark. Complex marriage? It's the godfather to free love's flower children. 60s communes like the farm in Tennessee, or Twin Oaks in Virginia nodding to Noyes' playbook with their open tents and shared labors, sharing not just bread but beds in the quest for jealousy, free bonds, echoes in modern polyamory circles where consent circles replace committees. Stirpiculture casts a long, thorny shadow, its selective breeding a dark mirror to eugenics horrors of the 20th century, from California's forced sterilizations under the 1909 law to Nazi breeding farms, a cautionary tale in our CRISPR age where we tinker with heirs anew in labs from Boston to Beijing, ethicists debating the ghost of Noyes' scientific gospel. Even mutual criticism lives on in therapy circles like encounter groups from the Human Potential Movement or corporate feedback loops at Google town halls. That raw honesty a tool for growth or a whip for the soul depending on the hand that wields it. Today, wander the Mansion House, now a bed and breakfast museum in Oneida where guests sip tea in restored parlors, rooms like the Central Department echoing with the ghosts of dances, tours unpacking diaries yellowed with passion, and faded tintypes of stern-faced believers, artifacts like Noyes' wire, rimmed spectacles glinting on shelves beside a continence pamphlet dog eared by time. Families trace roots to those 300 souls through genealogy fairs in Sherrill, reunions blending Yankee thrift with radical reminiscing, descendants running bed and breakfast or crafting artisanal silversmith heirlooms. And in Brattleboro, where it all sparked like flint on steel. Plaques mark the old Bible school site along the West River, hikers on the Retreat Meadows Trail pondering how one man's holy hunch reshaped the map of desire, a stone bench inscribed with his quip about licenses lost and found. It's the Northeast way, isn't it? These pockets of audacity where the possible bends toward the profane, inviting us to question. If perfection was once a commune's creed, complete with its silvers and sorrows, what wild heaven might we build next in these same valleys? What gets me, though, is the human pulse beneath the theory. Noyes, not some cold architect drafting blueprints in ivory towers, but a man scarred by loss, his dead babes haunting the hymns like minor keys. driving him to rewrite the rules of flesh and family with a desperation born of doubt. Harriet, his anchor through indictments and exiles, standing steadfast as the communities crumbled. Her quiet strength, the unsung verse in the ballad, penning letters that reveal a woman, wrestling her own angels of jealousy into submission. The believers, too. Farmers turned factory hands with ink, stained fingers. Women claiming voices in boardrooms long before suffrage's banner flew, like Mary Cragen, who rose from Putney weaver to silverworks overseer. Her ledgers as precise as prayers. In the end, the Oneida experiment didn't topple the world with millennial thunder, but it cracked it open like an egg for the new age, proving utopias aren't marble halls but messy, living things, prone to flourish and fracture like us, their lessons lingering in the gleam of a fork or the tangle of a lover's knot. And hey, that's the thrill of these Northeast legends. They're not frozen in amber under museum glass. They're alive in the questions they leave, pulsing through our choices like a hidden current. Next time you twirl a spoon at supper, pause for the story it stirs in the steam, or if you're road-tripping Route 7 through Vermont's veiled hills, detour to Putney's quiet corners, feel the weight of what-ifs that still hum in the wind through the birches. Who knows, you might catch a whiff of that millennial wind, urging your own bold leap into the unknown. That's the gift of these tales. They don't just recount the past parades, they ignite the now with sparks we can't ignore. That's our deep dive into John Humphrey Noyes and the Oneida Flame, a perfectionist's paradise that burned bright, fierce, and left us pondering its embers. If this commune's chaos has your thinker ticking overtime, drop us a line on the socials with your own utopian yarns or hidden histories. What's the boldest dream you've chased in these parts? Or the scandal that still simmers? Until next time, keep seeking that sinless spark amid the shadows. I'm your host, Mike D., signing off from the heart of New England. Stay radical, friends.